Hello, Michael Grasso with Private Pook Games. If I look excited, it's because I'm going to Gen Con later this week. That's super exciting. Looking forward to seeing a lot of new games, getting some new games, and because I'm inevitably going to buy new games while I'm there, as much as I'm going to try and control myself, as we all attempt and usually fail to do. I do want to make some room for some of the new things I'll be bringing home. So today I am going to be talking about my Gen Con Cull. This is games I am either selling or have sold recently in order to make room for the new stuff I'm going to get. Quick apology, I'm working on my lighting, getting a little better. I think the last video I put up, I was not happy with the lighting. People have been very positive with that. No one's really trolled. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a little better today, but I still have some things I would like to change about it. In the meantime, hang with me. The real focus is going to be... make sure I got this right. The real focus is going to be right over here by the drum set, because that's where I am going to be showing the games that I have either sold already or am selling, whether it's just online right now or if I'm bringing it to the Gen Con auction slash consignment store. So to begin with, I want to mention that a lot of times when people on YouTube, board gamers on YouTube, talk about games that they are selling, that is seen as inherently a negative review of the game. I do not think that's the case in all situations. I have games that are either no longer a fit for me or did not register with me the way they might register with other folks. Therefore, if you see a game here that I say I'm selling, do not take that as me bashing the game. It simply means I either did not connect with the game, or at one point I connected with it and I'm just not connecting with it anymore, or there's another game in my collection that fills that need. So my hope is that this is not seen as an inherently negative video. That said, the internet's the internet. You're going to think what you're going to think. So proceeding ahead. To begin with, Kinfire Chronicles, Night's Fall. I actually did a video where I tested how easy this was to set up, and my thoughts about the setup remain the same. This is a game that is super easy to set up. It's easy to get going. Unfortunately, I played it. I enjoyed some of my time with it, but inherently did not find it engaging enough to really, truly connect with it. I got through some of the quests. As it went on, I found myself just not very interested, not excited for any of the new cards I was getting, and I did not find myself really too engaged in where the story was going. Now, that's not going to be the case for everyone. This is a game that has been very well received. I am clearly in the minority here, but I do think there are some folks who have picked this game up based on some of the good praise for it, and have just found that it's either a little too simple for them, or there's just something about the card play that doesn't quite work. In particular for me, other than not being really excited by the upgrades the game offers, for me personally, I also found the town, the way that town actions and city actions were taken was just more tedious than it was fun. I could definitely see how the world building of the city could be really exciting for some folks, but for me, every time they added more things to Din Lux, I just felt like it added another layer of something I didn't like in the first place. So Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall, this is a very well-received game. It just was not for me, and I ended up passing on this one as a result. So let's see. Let's cross our fingers this slideshow keeps working. I'm going to say this wrong. Eila, I think it's Eila in something shiny. This was a game that I very, very, very much enjoyed initially. I knew when I bought it, it was probably going to get sold because it is a one and done for the most part. It has alternate endings, but I could not see wanting to go through the whole game again to get those alternate endings. In addition to it, I don't want to give any spoilers, but one thing that's very widely known about this game that I don't think is a spoiler, though feel free to go ahead 30 seconds if you'd like, is that it looks very shiny and bright and happy, but if you look at the face of that little bunny thing, there is a frown on it, and the reason why is this game does get dark pretty fast. I actually, based on what I'd heard about it, I expected it to get darker than it actually did. Maybe that's just because I played, too many Arkham Files games, but I found personally that the story, as it went darker, did not engage in addition to that darkness, and also With the ending, I'm not going to say anything about the ending, but it's inherently... I'm not going to... I understand the statement they were trying to make with it. I don't think the statement they accomplished had the intended effect on me that it was supposed to, and I'm not sure it was worth the journey of getting there. It also is one of those games where, in its finale, it tries so hard to be epic that it ends up making this very, very long, elongated ending that instead of being, big and epic and exciting, it just becomes long and tedious. And that's something that not just this game is guilty of. There's even games I've very, very, very much enjoyed that try to make these big, huge, epic conclusions that end up actually just being kind of a slog to get through. That's a general thing in board games right now that I think just perfecting the finale is very difficult for a lot of designers right now. What else? Dungeon Alliance. This is an example of a game that I actually really liked, and I had a hard time deciding to sell it because it was a gift from my wife, so there's a little bit of a, sweetness of, hey, my wife got me this game. It's so cool, and I really enjoyed it. I played it on a vacation once. We were on just when we had downtime. It's super fun. I like the fact that it's very card-based. When it came out, it was originally seen as sort of Mage Knight Light. I do not think it's Mage Knight Light. The only thing it really shares is its combat that's inherently controlled by cards and not dice. To that extent, there is something kind of special about it. If you're a person who does not like rolling dice, this is worth checking out. I simply felt that it starts out really fun, but when you've seen everything, you have really seen everything. And this does not remain engaging for the long haul. At this point, if I pulled it out, I wouldn't really feel like I was experiencing anything new. Once again, a good game, just not something I need to keep in my collection. I have other things that fill that niche, to be honest. All right. This one actually I am not selling. This is supposed to be at the end, but we'll go out of order, whatever. This was one I was on the fence about. I still have Eldritch Horror. I have some expansions for it. And I'm one of those weirdos who loves Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, despite all the reasons that it should be considered an outdated and tedious and cumbersome game. And it is all of those things. Everything you will hear about it, if you go online and Google Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, everything that comes up you'll hear is true and I agree with, and yet I still love the game. Eldritch Horror was an attempt, I'm not going to say things that have already been said a million times, but it was the first attempt to streamline it. There is an extent to that I really love. However, I'm one of those people who prefers the more sort of localized setting of Arkham Horror over the traveling the world thing. I don't really want to mix Arkham files with Indiana Jones, and that's what this kind of does. And I almost sold it. I decided not to for right now because I feel like it still does have a place. It takes up a lot of shelf space having this and Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. I did sell Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. Once again, I love what Nikki did with that game. They did such a great job with taking what was in Eldritch Horror and applying it in a way to Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, but it did end up being a new game that I only had limited fun with. It's great for some people, and there's no right or wrong answer to which one is the best. I just personally like Arkham Horror 2nd Edition the best for reasons I can't fully explain. So Eldritch Horror did stay in my collection, but I've been back and forth on it, let's just say. All right, this is another one that still is in my collection, but I came so close to selling it. These were supposed to be the last two. I apologize, it's a little out of order. Folklore the Affliction is a game I tried out, I want to say like 1 or 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago, and bounced off of it hard. I love the setting. I love some of the aspects of it. I absolutely hate the D100 system. I did not particularly like the combat. It just felt like I was rolling dice over and over again. There was no real advantage to moving around. I, was going to sell it on multiple occasions, and I lucked into an extremely cheap copy of Fall of the Spire, which I have heard improves the game quite a bit. So at the last minute, I decided I'm not going to sell this to make room. I'm going to try Fall of the Spire. I don't know when, but I made a promise to myself that before I sell this game, I'm going to try it with that expansion and then see if I still don't really connect with it, then bye-bye Folklore, someone else can take this one. Ghost Betwixt. This is another one that I came really close to selling. I've held on to for a couple reasons. First, I've held on to it because Dustin, the designer of the game, I've never met him, but online interaction-wise, he comes off as one of the most authentic and nice people ever. I don't know him personally. I'm not saying that because he's my buddy. He runs a really good community. And recently he's talked about trying to get chapter 2. This is technically half of the game he planned. He ended up splitting it up into 2 chapters. For a while he wasn't going to do the second chapter because the reality of kickstarting and delivering a board game is actually more horrible than the horror in the game in many instances, but he is deciding that he might want to do the next one. So I said, you know what? Let's hold on to this just in case. For the record, this is a very good game. Thematically, I love the art style. I love sort of like the quasi, comic book horror, sort of like 80s, 90s little aesthetic that's kind of spread in there. And the idea that you're just a mom, a dad, and kids trying to fight your way through a haunted attraction is kind of cool. The biggest issues with it is it's more complicated than it needs to be. The way the rooms are set up and randomly generated requires you to do all these sort of intricate things to make sure you set up the room a particular way, and it's not anything that the complexity added into doing that didn't really add anything to the game. If the game is just literally, this is a game that I almost feel like would have been better if it had pre-generated maps. I don't need random rooms to make variety. I just like playing through the dungeon you intended to create. That said, I want to say right again, if you're looking at this art and it looks kind of cool to you, I would highly recommend you try and pick this up. 1, to support a very cool game designer and help get the second game made, and 2, because you might really like it. There's a couple things about it that I found a little more tedious, but the general ideas in it are pretty fun, and aesthetically and thematically it's awesome. All right, this one I am selling. I'm actually gonna bring this one to Gen Con to put it in as an auction. This is Galaxy Defenders. Some of the folks who've watched the channel before know that one of my favorite dungeon crawlers is Sword and Sorcery, specifically Ancient Chronicles. I love that. That's one of my favorite dungeon crawler campaigns ever. I've played it multiple times. I went back and got Mortal Souls, which is the previous one they had. Not as good as Ancient Chronicles, but still awesome. I've played Northwind Tales. Also not quite as awesome as Ancient Chronicles, but still fun. And then I went back further, and this was an earlier implementation of a somewhat similar system that was used for basically a game that's sort of XCOM-ish. It's obviously aliens, it's more sci-fi and big guns. I did not connect with it. I do know there are people who still think this is the superior game, and I can totally see where they're coming from. It's nice to see this system implemented on a hex grid rather than area control, which is what they did with Ancient Chronicles. But for me personally, Galaxy Defenders did not personally work for me that well, and hence I'm getting rid of it. And it's out of print, so if you do find yourself interested in and find a copy, don't sleep on it. Divinity, Original Sin, the board game. This is one I actually got at last year's Gen Con. Had fun with it, played through the whole campaign, but had no intention of ever returning to it, so I sold it. There's plenty of good things in it. If you like the game Divinity Original Sin, it's worth checking out. For me, I guess I did kind of want a little more tactical. I wanted the combat to feel a little more tactical than it actually did. It's more of a storybook that you play through and have combats as you go. You explore areas with a time limit, if that's your thing. It's very well implemented. There's a lot of good components. But ultimately, I played through the campaign and knew I would never return to it. So I sold this. This one has been gone actually for a while, actually. Descent, Journeys in the Dark. This one is also out of print. I only have the core game. I remember enjoying playing through it. I'm bringing it to Gen Con to sell it because just one versus many games are something that I kind of think need to stay in the past. I think that was a cool idea. I think it's a little outdated now. I don't need to return to those games. I sold Imperial Assault last year. I'm going to sell this one. It was awesome in its heyday, I guess, but I'm ready to move on from this. I appreciate what it did for dungeon crawlers, though, at the time when it was out. Aeon's End. To be very clear, I'm not selling all of my Aeon's End. I'm keeping Aeon's End, New Age, and all the expansions for that, but what I decided is I don't need a ton of stuff for Aeon's End. New Age was my favorite implementation of it. The monsters and mages are really cool. I like how the expedition process works. So I kept that particular cycle, and I am selling this cycle Aeon's End 2nd Edition, and I am selling War Eternal. So I just don't need them all. I don't play them all. It takes up too much space on my shelf, and I know for some folks they will never get enough of Aeon's End. Me, I have enough of Aeon's End. I'll play it when it comes up, and I enjoy it when it does, but I don't need to keep all these different things. I did not need to keep Legacy, I don't need to keep 2nd Edition, and I don't need to keep War Eternal. I will keep New Age and the mini expansions that I was able to find, one of which, the last one I required, I found at Gen Con last year, so that was really cool. Let's see. Of Dreams and Shadows. I have Of Dreams and Shadows. I found it on a good deal with the monster. I can't remember. The expansion monster something. Another game that kind of plays like Arkham Horror, but in a very fantasy setting. It has encounters in it that are cool. There's something kind of nice about this, but ultimately it just felt a little too empty and random to me. This is a game that is very beloved by people who love it, and all the love to you guys. I'm glad you like it. I did not find myself connecting. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful art. I almost could keep it just for the art, but the game itself just did not connect with me. Way too random and just didn't seem like there was a whole lot of player agency. And Massive Darkness 2 Hellscape. This is a game that I initially, when I first played it, I really enjoyed it. I actually sold it about a month ago. One, because I was preparing to get new stuff for Gen Con and other Kickstarters that might show up, but also because Massive Darkness 2, I really respect what they did. This is the ultimate kill monsters and get loot game, and they have so much with that. But for me, just the monster battles, every time you get into a combat with someone, it kind of feels ultimately the same to me, and it got old for me. There was a point in time when I ended up getting the Heavenfall expansion. I thought, well, maybe as a campaign it opens it up a little more, and it didn't. It added new monsters, it made a campaign. I realized very quickly that playing this game as a campaign, as much as I love campaigns, really isn't a strong suit of this one. This is made to be a one-shot in my opinion, and also adding new monsters didn't really add variety. It made the monsters look different. It didn't make them really behave much different. So, as a result, I say goodbye to this one. I hope the person who bought it is enjoying it more than I was at the time when I sold it. Is that the last one? Nope. Runebound 3rd Edition. This is another game that's kind of fun, but I feel like I have enough games where you go around on a map and have encounters. I don't need another one. Runebound is like the fantasy version of Arkham Horror, the board game, or Eldritch Horror, or Of Dreams and Shadows. These are all games where you walk around on a map, you have encounters, you try to get stronger, so eventually you can beat the big bad. Same thing here, a very nice implementation of it. Maybe there's this expansion that makes solo playing a little bit easier. Maybe if I could get that expansion without paying an egregiously huge third market price for it, then maybe I would have kept it, but I just don't feel the need to. I have enough stuff that scratches that itch. And my Dungeons and Dragons adventure games. I have Castle Ravenloft and I had Legend of Drizzt. It was the games, the adventures themselves are way too basic for me to really find engaging, but I had these two because I was initially a few years ago running a Dungeons and Dragons club. A few students had asked me to help them out with it, so I got it started, and I bought these just for the minis so the kids could use in the club. I have passed that club on to another teacher who is doing a good job with it. I was ready to just stick with my board gaming club. They're taking care of, watching over the D&D folk. This no longer really had a use. And to be honest, like, middle school kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, the minis are nice, but they don't need the minis. They need maps. Let them draw maps. Let them draw pictures. They run away with it, and that's awesome. And if they want minis, hey, there's local gaming stores where they can help out with that. But I've just found that these games, like playing them as the board game, it's too basic for me. I'm glad that people love it. I'm glad that they work really well as windows into the board gaming world. I think some people start with these and then move on to more complex stuff, and that is wonderful. But for me, I have no reason to keep these other than the minis, and I have plenty of minis games. I don't need more of those just for the sake of having them. I think that's the end. Yep, and we're back to Kinfire Chronicles. So that's my Gen Con Cull, hope you enjoyed it. If any of these are games you super duper enjoyed, please know I'm not casting shade on you. It's just games that I have decided that I don't want to keep anymore, and I want to make room for other stuff. If you're going to be at Gen Con, I look forward to maybe I'll see you there. Come and say hi if you spot me. Otherwise, have a great week, and I hope you score some good stuff at the convention as well.